After our final night together, my alpha and childhood sweetheart, Elias, didn't kiss my forehead or whisper sweet nothings. Instead, he called a private doctor to have his temporary mark surgically scrubbed from my skin. "I'm getting married next month," he stated, adjusting his bespoke cuffs in the mirror, not even making eye contact with me. "I don't want my new Omega to get the wrong idea. He gets jealous easily, and I can't bear to see him cry." He paused, finally casting a cold, calculating glance in my direction. "Besides, you're an older single Omega now. You can't go on dates with other alphas if you're still carrying my mark." With the flick of his wrist, he tossed a heavy paper check onto the bedside table. His voice was cruel, empty of the warmth I had chased for over half a decade. "You've been with me a long time. I'll make sure you're generously compensated. I'll send you an invitation to the wedding. Make sure you come to the reception so the press sees it was an amicable split." Whenever Elias went into his rut, it was absolute hell for me. There wasn't a single patch of my skin left untouched. The scent gland on the back of my neck was constantly covered in deep, purple bruised bite marks. His pheromones, a heavy, intoxicating dark rum scent, acted like an oppressive, transparent dome, trapping me completely in his domain. I remembered lifting a weak, trembling hand to push at the broad, muscular chest of the alpha, pinning me down, begging for a momentary reprieve. "Elias, please, I really can't take any more. Let me rest." It had been 7 days since I stepped into his secluded private villa. My entire world had been reduced to the four corners of that mattress and the overwhelming presence of Elias. The alpha on top of me had simply ignored my pleas. His large hand on my waist tightened, bruising the flesh. A sharp, searing pain shot through my delicate scent gland as his powerful rum pheromones forced their way in, aggressively dominating and overtaking the subtle, calming territory of my own bamboo scent. I trembled all over, completely broken and subservient to his overwhelming biology. Tears streamed down my cheeks uncontrollably, soaking into the fine silk pillows. Elias's dark brows had furrowed in deep annoyance. He reached up, roughly pressing his thumb against my swollen, tear-stained eyelids. "Stop crying, it's annoying." A sour ache rose in my chest, making my nose sting with unshed grief. "You're so mean," I mumbled in a hoarse, broken voice. Despite his cruelty, my bamboo scent instinctively and softly wrapped around his aggressive rum aura, trying to soothe him. Elias was always terrifyingly fierce during his ruts. He'd maliciously tease and push me until I broke down in tears, only to strictly forbid me from actually crying. After his rut finally ended, I lay completely drained on the oversized bed, picking up my datapad with shaking hands to reply to days' worth of ignored work messages. The sound of the shower trickled from the master bathroom. Half an hour later, the water stopped, and Elias emerged, wrapped in a plush bathrobe. He looked at me, his brow furrowed with familiar impatience. "Hurry up and take a shower. The smell is stifling." I opened my tired arms, desperately asking for a simple hug. "I have no energy. Can you carry me?" A marked Omega, driven by deep biological instinct, will always find ways to seek proximity and comfort from their alpha after an intense heat or rut. Elias shot me a look so cold it could have frozen the sun. "Julian, don't be so dramatic." I lowered my gaze, biting my lip to hide the crushing disappointment and humiliation swirling in my eyes. 6 years. The only time I ever received even a shred of primal tenderness from Elias was when we were tangled in the sheets. Outside of that bedroom, he was cold, calculated, and emotionless, like a block of ice that would never, ever melt. By the time I dragged myself out of the bathroom, Elias had already ordered the housekeeper to thoroughly sanitize the room. The intimately mixed scents of rum and bamboo were so faint, they were practically scrubbed from existence. The 7 days of madness felt like a fever dream that had never happened. After a silent, suffocating breakfast, Elias drove me straight to the Federation Hospital's glandular surgery clinic. I froze at the entrance, confused and terrified. "Are you not feeling well?" I asked, my voice laced with genuine concern. "No," he replied smoothly, checking his designer watch. "I scheduled a mark removal surgery for you." My ears started ringing. A violent chill ran through my body, dropping the temperature of my blood to absolute zero. I reached out blindly to steady myself on a nearby plastic waiting chair to keep from collapsing onto the sterile tile. "Why?" "I told you. I'm getting married next month, and I don't want my Omega to get the wrong idea. He gets jealous easily, and I can't bear to see him cry." "Can't bear to see him cry." "Then what about me? For a terrifying moment, I felt like I had been dragged to the bottom of a frozen lake. An icy chill crept up from the very bottom of my heart, spreading rapidly through my veins until my entire body was numb, leaving nothing but an echoing, hollow cold. A nurse called my name over the intercom, telling me to prep for the procedure. Seeing me standing there frozen, Elias spoke again, completely detached. "Julian, you're almost 28. The Federation mandates that any Omega who cannot secure an Alpha partner by 28 will be automatically matched by the system with a highly compatible Alpha. You can't go into the matchmaking pool still carrying my residual mark." He remembered the Federation law about turning 28, but he entirely forgot that my 28th birthday was exactly next week. Elias cruelly pressed the physical check into my trembling hand. "I've already paid the VIP surgeon's fee. You've been with me for a long time. I won't let you leave my side empty-handed. I'll send the wedding invitation to your apartment. Make sure you come." He took a step back, creating a physical distance between us that mirrored the emotional chasm. "Julian, this is where we end. I requested the gland-scraping surgery be performed completely without anesthesia. The doctor thought I was insane, but I insisted. I needed to feel it. I wanted to remember this bone-deep, excruciating agony forever, so I would never be foolish enough to love like this again. The sharp surgical scalpel sliced micromillimeters into my delicate neck, scraping and peeling away the entrenched rum-scent bit by agonizing bit. The harsh fluorescent light above the operating table was blinding. Under its glare, my face grew paler and paler, the life draining out of me. Elias's parting words hammered into my fragile heart like rusted nails. After being by his side for 6 grueling years, I genuinely believed I would be the one standing at the altar with him. After all, I was the only Omega he had ever permitted into his private life. 6 years ago, Elias and I had unexpectedly reconnected at a high society gala. The cheerful, protective boy from my childhood memories had grown into a towering, impossibly handsome alpha. The only thing that hadn't changed was that expressionless, moody demeanor. He was exactly like his pheromones. One single touch was enough to leave you dangerously intoxicated. When I first started actively pursuing him, I didn't harbor high hopes. A golden heir like Elias had seen every beautiful Omega the capital planet had to offer. But surprisingly, after a few months of push and pull, we ended up in his bed. In the dark, he was dominant, insatiable, and fiercely possessive. I happily drowned myself in his rum scent. I let him do whatever he wanted to my body and my heart. I stupidly thought I had secured a place in his soul. Looking back, it was all just a pathetic, one-sided illusion. "Julian, you're such a massive joke." When I stumbled out of the recovery room, a thick bandage taped securely over my throbbing, mutilated neck, Elias was already long gone. He had sent a sterile text message to my datapad. Something urgent came up at the corporation. Had to leave. I stood in the hospital corridor for a few silent seconds. Then I let out a dry, sarcastic laugh, opened my contact list, and permanently blocked his number. On my 28th birthday, my friends bombarded me with sweet messages and virtual gifts. I sat completely alone in my dimly lit apartment, quietly eating an entire strawberry cake by myself. Warm, heavy tears dripped down my chin, landing softly onto the pink frosting. The cake in my mouth was supposed to be sweet, but it tasted like pure ash and bitterness. For the past 6 years, I had to drop endless, exhausting hints every single spring just to make sure Elias didn't forget to buy me a present. This year, without my desperate reminders, he unsurprisingly forgot I even existed. After silently swallowing the last bite of cake, I pulled out a massive cardboard box. I systematically went through the apartment, packing up absolutely everything that had even the slightest connection to Elias. Expensive tailored clothes he had left behind, limited edition shoes, matching coffee mugs, expensive watches, it all went in. Once the massive box was taped shut, I shoved it into the darkest corner of the room, scheduling a Federation Express courier to haul it to his corporate office tomorrow. The digital clock on my wall struck midnight. Feeling utterly defeated, I opened my government-issued datapad. A gentle notification chime echoed in the quiet room. A new name and profile had automatically populated in my spouse information field. Name, Ronan. Classification, Enigma Alpha. The Alpha in the holographic photo possessed a strikingly chiseled profile. His jawline was sharp, resolute, and rugged. He had strong, commanding brows and a thin, faint silver scar resting just near the corner of his left eye. giving him an undeniably roguish, untamed look. His registered address was located on X-Star, a frontier agricultural planet located 20 light-years away from the bustling, polluted capital planet. The system prompt blinked at the bottom of the screen. For a harmonious and biologically stable marriage, the Federation system strongly advises you to begin cohabitation with your matched alpha as soon as possible. A new, quiet planet sounded like heaven to me. His datapad comlink was listed in the directory. I hesitated for a fraction of a second, my thumb hovering over the screen, before dialing the unfamiliar number. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was incredibly deep, vibrating with a slight gravelly rasp that made the speaker on my datapad crackle. "Hi, this is Julian. I'm your assigned Omega partner." A brief pause. "Yes, the Federation system matched us. I apologize for not reaching out first. I was out herding the sheep all day. I haven't had a chance to check the terminal." Herding sheep? Is he a literal shepherd? X-Star was notorious for being a rustic, underdeveloped agricultural hub. After a few beats of slightly awkward silence, I gathered my courage. "The system suggests we start living together soon to acclimate our pheromones. I can book a shuttle to X-Star in a few days to meet you, if that's okay?" "Okay," Ronan replied, his tone steady and strangely grounding. "Send me your flight details when you get here. I'll be waiting at the spaceport to pick you up." The interplanetary commercial shuttle finally docked at the dusty X-Star spaceport. Stepping off the ramp and into the terminal crowd, Ronan was utterly impossible to miss. He was undeniably handsome, but in a raw, intimidating way that made ordinary citizens give him a wide berth. He possessed an air of strict military integrity, and beneath his simple flannel and denim, his massive frame was packed with dense muscle. He immediately spotted me, walking over with long, purposeful strides. Without a single word, he gently took my heavy luggage from my hands. I followed behind him nervously, like a lost puppy. At a staggering 6'5", one of his casual strides was equal to 2 of my hurried steps. Glancing back, Ronan immediately noticed I was struggling to keep pace. Without a word, he visibly shortened his stride, slowing down to perfectly match my walking speed. "We're running low on fresh food at the house," he noted as we reached his rugged, all-terrain hover truck. "I'm going to stop by the town supermarket to stock up. Is that okay? You can pick up any specific daily necessities you need." "That's fine," I replied softly. After that brief practical exchange, a long, comfortable silence fell between us. As we pushed the cart through the produce aisles, picking out fresh local vegetables, Ronan casually looked down at me. "Is there anything you absolutely can't eat or violently dislike?" I hesitated, my fingers gripping the edge of the shopping cart. I answered honestly, "I'm not a big fan of seafood, especially fish." Ronan just nodded once. I didn't know it at the time, but from that day forward, a single piece of fish never once appeared on our dinner table. It was such a stark contrast. I despised fish, but Elias had loved it. One time at a Michelin star restaurant, Elias had casually dumped a large piece of sea bass onto my plate. I had tentatively tried it before politely whispering that I didn't really like the taste. Elias had merely scoffed, throwing 2 harsh words at me. So spoiled. I had tried to laugh it off, weakly defending myself. "I'm not spoiled. I'm actually very easy to take care of." Elias's face had remained a mask of cold indifference. After that night, he never once offered to put food on my plate again. When we finally arrived at Ronan's picturesque countryside home, I was completely shocked when he carried my suitcases straight into the expansive master bedroom, while tossing his own duffel bag into the smaller guest room down the hall. "Wait," I stammered, standing in the doorway. "Why are you giving me the master suite?" Ronan looked at me as if the answer was the most obvious thing in the universe. "You're an Omega, and I'm your Alpha. As your legal partner, it is my fundamental duty to ensure you have the best care and comfort." I clutched the handle of my suitcase, my nose suddenly stinging with an unexpected wave of emotion. "You go ahead and unpack," he said gently, turning toward the kitchen. "I'll get dinner started." 30 minutes later, the house smelled incredible. Ronan had whipped up a couple of simple, perfectly seasoned stir-fry dishes and a rich, hearty vegetable stew. When I finally emerged from the bedroom, the dining table was already set. 2 people, a small cozy home, a warm lamp glowing overhead, a simple shared meal. For the past 6 years, I had vividly imagined a peaceful domestic scene just like this one countless times. only to be met with cold, empty dining rooms and Elias's late-night excuses. "Julian, wash up, it's time to eat." Without any warning, the dam broke. Hot tears streamed rapidly down my face. I quickly turned my back to him, viciously wiping my eyes with my sleeves, managing a choked, quiet okay. After dinner, I insisted on loading the dishes into the sanitizer. Ronan, likely sensing my emotional fragility and worried I would feel overwhelmed, had retreated to his guest room early to give me space. I stood outside his door for 10 minutes, nervously clutching the hem of my oversized sweater. Finally, I worked up the courage to knock. "Ronan, I need to talk to you." He opened the door instantly, his tall frame looming in the doorway, and quietly followed me out into the brightly lit living room. I took a deep, shuddering breath. Reaching up, I pulled down the collar of my sweater. With a violently trembling hand, I peeled off the thick medical-grade scent blocker patch. The ugly, raw, surgically damaged scent gland was fully exposed under the bright living room lights. The skin was mottled, red, and scarred. "Ronan," I whispered, my voice breaking. I was in a very toxic, very bad relationship. I just had severe gland-scraping surgery a week ago to forcefully remove a 6-year claim. As his legally assigned partner, I felt I owed him the absolute truth. Not every alpha could accept an omega with a mutilated gland, unable to produce a strong, pure scent. Many found it repulsive. Ronan didn't gasp. He didn't look disgusted. He didn't even speak. Instead, he took a slow step forward, his large, calloused hands remarkably gentle, as he took a fresh blocker patch from the table. He leaned down, carefully and tenderly applying it over the scarred tissue, his warm fingers brushing against my nape, sending a jolt of comforting heat through my system. "Julian," his low, steady voice rumbled, echoing in the quiet room. "That is not your fault. The only one at fault here is the bastard who hurt you." In the dead of the quiet X-star night, Ronan's unwavering words wrapped around me like a heavy, protective blanket. All my repressed emotions felt like a massive ball of cotton shoved down my throat, making it impossible to breathe. Since I woke up from that bloody surgery, not a single person had bothered to ask me if it hurt. "Julian," Ronan continued, sitting down on the edge of the coffee table so he was at my eye level. "I've never been in a serious relationship before. I don't have much experience with romance. My parents passed away a long time ago in a border skirmish, so it's just been me out here. I have a little bit of savings, a lot of land, and not many hobbies." He was laying his cards on the table, offering me his absolute vulnerability in return for mine. I looked up at him through my tears, my damaged heart feeling incredibly soft and deeply pained all at once. I couldn't quite identify this strange, blossoming feeling in my chest. "Ronan," I murmured, a genuine, albeit watery, smile breaking through. I look forward to our future together." His dark eyes softened, the faint scar by his eye crinkling. "Julian, the pleasure is entirely mine." A week into my new life on X-Star, my datapad rang loudly. It was my best friend Toby calling from the capital. He was furious, loudly cursing Elias out for being a blind, egotistical sociopath. Toby was completely on my side. "I saw the news, Jules. That new Omega of his isn't even 1/10 as beautiful or kind as you. Elias is a massive, epic idiot." I knew exactly why Toby was calling today of all days. Today was Elias's highly publicized wedding day. The new Omega's family was one of the wealthiest political dynasties on the capital planet, so the grand ceremony was being broadcast on every major holo channel. I glanced at the holo TV in the corner of the living room. On the screen, a beautiful, delicate Omega was glowing with picture-perfect happiness. Elias stood tall in a custom white tuxedo, holding the Omega's hand, sliding a massive diamond ring onto his finger. There was a rare, subtle hint of tenderness in his usually frigid eyes. A complex wave of bitterness, hurt, and profound sadness washed over me. My chest felt agonizingly heavy and damp. I gently cut Toby off over the comms. "Toby, let's not talk about him anymore, please." There was stunned silence on the other end for a few seconds. "Julian, I'm so happy to hear you finally say that out loud. It took you 6 years of bleeding out to see exactly who he really was. Your time wasn't a waste if it got you out of there." Suddenly, the TV screen went black. I blinked, looking up. Ronan was standing near the sofa, the remote control in his hand. Without a single word, he placed a fresh box of soft tissues on my lap, turned on his heel, and quietly went outside to tend to the farmhouse, giving me the privacy to grieve the final death of my past. After a quiet lunch, Ronan reappeared at the door, dusting off his boots. I'm heading out to the main pastures. Do you want to come see the farm? I nodded eagerly, needing the distraction. X-Star was breathtaking. Crystal blue skies, vast, pillowy white clouds, and a rolling carpet of vibrant green grass that stretched infinitely toward the horizon. Flocks of sheep dotted the hillsides, looking like scattered white pearls on emerald velvet. The entire scene belonged in a classical oil painting. Ronan handed me a beautifully carved wooden shepherd's crook. Want to try herding them? I took the crook tentatively, walking out among the gentle animals, breathing in the crisp, unpolluted air. The wind caught my hair, and for the first time in months, I felt light. A few minutes later, Ronan rode up on a massive, majestic black stallion. He pulled the reins, the horse coming to a gentle halt beside me. He bent down from the saddle, extending his large, calloused hand toward me. Want to give it a try? I'll guide you. If I go up there, what about the sheep? I asked nervously. His dark eyes crinkled in that barely noticeable, devastatingly handsome smile. Don't worry about them, Julian. This entire prairie belongs to me. They have nowhere to get lost. I stared at his outstretched hand. I took a breath, reached up, and placed my hand firmly in his. With effortless strength, Ronan gripped my wrist and hauled me up onto the saddle, settling me securely right in front of him. He wrapped his strong arms around my waist to grab the reins, pulling my back flush against his broad, solid chest. My body tensed up completely out of pure instinct. Relax, his deep voice rumbled right next to my ear, sending shivers down my spine. If you fall, I'll be your cushion. I've got you. With a click of his tongue, the stallion took off into a smooth canter. The cool wind whistled past my ears. I slowly closed my eyes, leaning back into his protective embrace, feeling an overwhelming sense of contentment. The toxic, suffocating gloom that had taken root in my heart was slowly, surely dissipating into the X-Star wind. Ronan, I called out over the rushing wind. Thank you for making me smile. A month later, disaster struck. My first post-surgery heat arrived violently and without warning. Because my scent gland was heavily traumatized, the hormonal fluctuations were absolutely chaotic. A fierce, boiling fever surged through my veins, and my natural scent, a crisp, rain-washed bamboo, exploded, filling the entire farmhouse with a suffocatingly thick pheromone fog. My hands violently trembled as I frantically fumbled through the bathroom drawer, desperately searching for the government-issued suppressants. I managed to jab the auto-injector into my thigh, but the synthetic suppressants were utterly useless against a heat triggered by surgical trauma. The pain blooming in the back of my neck was a dense, excruciatingly sharp ache, like 1,000 burning needles pricking directly into my spinal cord. I felt like a dried-up riverbed being relentlessly scorched by a desert sun. Ronan, who had been chopping wood outside, immediately sensed the biological distress. The heavy front door slammed open. "Julian, what's happening?" he shouted, his heavy boots pounding down the hallway. A pained, breathless groan was my only reply from the bedroom floor. Finding the door locked, Ronan didn't hesitate. He kicked the wooden door right off its hinges, splintering the frame. He rushed in, his eyes wide with panic, spotting the empty suppressant injector rolling uselessly across the hardwood floor. "I'm taking you to the local hospital right now," he declared, easily scooping my slick, feverish body into his arms. My mind was completely hazy, drowned in primal omega instincts. I reached out, my fingers digging desperately into his muscular bicep, begging him, "No, please, I need your pheromones. Just a little bit. It hurts so fucking much." The lingering, microscopic traces of Elias's toxic rum scent buried deep beneath my scar tissue were actively fighting against my own bamboo scent, trying to regain dominance over my biology. It was a literal war inside my body. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I let out a pathetic sob, large, hot tears rolling rapidly down my flushed face. Ronan froze, his jaw locked tightly. Slowly, carefully, he unleashed his own Enigma pheromones. A rich, earthy scent of fresh-cut grass and rain poured into the room. The moment it hit my senses, my distressed bamboo scent surged forward, eagerly and softly wrapping around his aura, begging for salvation. Ronan sat on the edge of the bed, pulling me securely into his lap. He patiently and steadily released his soothing pheromones, washing away the pain. I aggressively gripped his flannel shirt, curling into a tight ball against his chest in absolute distress, my body shaking violently. Ronan wrapped his massive arms entirely around me, holding me tight, his large hand gently patting my back rhythmically as he murmured deep, comforting nonsense into my hair. Within minutes, the overwhelming, grounding power of his fresh grass scent ruthlessly crushed and drove out the absolute last parasitic traces of Elias's rum aura from my system. I finally could breathe. Sensing the battle was won, Ronan's hand slowly reached up toward the back of my neck, intending to check the surgical scar. I violently flinched back, a whimper tearing from my throat, sheer terror flashing in my eyes. The bone-deep agony of the scalpel slicing through my flesh without anesthesia was permanently seared into my brain. Ronan immediately froze, pulling both his hands back where I could see them. His eyes were filled with profound sorrow. "Shh! Don't be afraid, Julian. I'm not going to touch it. I swear on my life I will never do anything to hurt you." For the next 3 days of my agonizing heat, Ronan completely shut down the farm. He stayed locked in the house just to take care of me. Whenever the fever spiked and I cried out in pain, he would immediately appear, sitting beside me, quietly flooding the room with his soothing grass pheromones until I fell back into a peaceful sleep. Aside from comforting hugs and holding my hand, he never once crossed any boundaries. He didn't take advantage of my vulnerable state. He was a perfect gentleman. Meanwhile, light years away in the glittering, hyper-modern financial district of the capital planet, Elias sat in the top-floor executive suite of the Smith Corporation skyscraper. He stared blankly at his left hand, violently twisting the custom platinum wedding band on his ring finger. It felt unbearably heavy, restrictive, and entirely wrong. With a sudden burst of irritation, he ripped it off and tossed it carelessly onto his glass desk. His mind aggressively flashed back to 3 years ago. For their 3rd anniversary, Julian had saved up his modest salary to buy them a pair of beautiful handcrafted couple's rings. Elias had bluntly refused to wear his, citing it was unprofessional for board meetings. Julian had stood there, his bright smile slowly dying, replaced by a forced, brittle expression. "The ring is a gift, Elias. What you do with it is your business." Without a second thought, Elias had callously tossed the velvet box directly into the nearest wastebasket. Julian had stood paralyzed in shock for a few seconds, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears, before turning and quietly leaving the penthouse. It hadn't taken long for the crushing weight of his own cruelty to hit Elias. That night, after the staff had left, the great heir to the Smith dynasty had desperately dug through the trash with his bare hands to retrieve the small velvet box. It had taken him 2 full weeks of swallowing his massive pride and buying expensive, soulless gifts to coax Julian into forgiving him. Snapping out of his painful reverie, Elias glanced at the digitized calendar on his monitor. His chest tightened violently. It was time for Julian's quarterly heat. During his heats, Julian transformed. He would become impossibly sweet, needy, and extra clingy, like a gorgeous little shadow you couldn't shake. If Julian couldn't physically see Elias in the room, he would pout, his gorgeous eyes welling up with tears, looking so pitifully beautiful that it drove Elias's alpha instincts wild. In the past, Elias was always there to ravage and soothe him, but this time, Julian was utterly alone. He was probably curling up in agony, forced to get through it with cold, synthetic suppressants. A few days ago, Elias's corporate receptionist had handed him a massive cardboard box. The shipping label was from Julian. Inside was every single item Elias had ever left at that apartment. Elias couldn't deny it to himself anymore. He had loved Julian. He still did. But more than Julian, Elias had loved the intoxicating allure of absolute power. To secure his position as the uncontested head of the Smith family empire, he had coldly calculated that a political marriage to a high-ranking Omega was required. But the guilt of forcing Julian onto that surgical table without any warning was beginning to rot him from the inside out. Without thinking, he slammed his fist on the intercom button to summon his executive assistant. "Have the property transfer documents for the oceanfront villa in Ulu Bay been processed yet?" Elias demanded. The assistant entered, looking extremely nervous, swallowing hard. "Sir, Mr. Julian explicitly refused the transfer. He sent the deed back." Elias scowled, a dark aura of rum flooding the office. "Send it back to him. Tell him it's his belated 28th birthday present." The assistant hesitated, clutching his tablet. "Sir, Mr. Julian's 28th birthday has already passed." Elias froze, his blood running cold. "Passed when?" "A month ago, sir. Exactly 1 week after he was discharged from the glandular surgery wing." Elias felt the air leave his lungs. After work that evening, he forced his private driver to speed to Julian's apartment complex. He took the private elevator up. The porch light, the one Julian had unfailingly left on for him every single night for 6 years so he wouldn't stumble in the dark, was permanently burnt out. His security team informed him that Julian was no longer residing on the capital planet. Worse, Elias's contact info was completely blacklisted on all Federation networks. Desperate, his hands shaking slightly, Elias bypassed the blocks and called Toby, Julian's fiercely protective best friend. "Where is he?" Elias demanded the second the call connected. A sharp, mocking snort echoed from the speaker. Toby's tone was absolutely dripping with venom. "The baby's dead and buried, and now you're suddenly trying to play daddy? Elias, don't you think it's fucking hilarious that you're asking me this now? I just want to know where he is. I need to make sure he's okay." Julian is currently cohabitating with his legally matched, high-tier alpha husband, and he is extremely happy. He is adored. Elias, you ruthlessly wasted 6 of the best years of Julian's life. If you have even a microscopic shred of human conscience left in that black heart of yours, do not go looking for him and ruin his peace. Toby aggressively terminated the connection. Elias stood frozen in the cold wind outside the empty apartment building. He mechanically pulled a cigarette from a silver case and lit it. Julian had a legal alpha now. Would Julian be cuddling in that stranger's muscular arms right now, acting cute and needy? Would he completely surrender, offering up his delicate, scarred neck to be claimed and bitten by someone else? Would he carefully memorize that new alpha's likes and dislikes, treating him like a god, just like he used to do for Elias? The more Elias visualized it, the more violently his chest heaved. A murderous, terrifying gloom overtook his features. He violently threw the half-smoked cigarette onto the concrete, crushing it into dust beneath his expensive leather shoe. His cold, indifferent eyes turned completely feral. He pulled his comms back up, dialing his head of security. "Find out exactly what planet Julian is on right now. I don't care what it costs." Back on X-Star, a few days after my heat finally subsided, Ronan insisted on taking me into town to the local clinic for a thorough checkup. Sitting in the waiting room, I nervously fiddled with the hem of my shirt. Ronan reached over, his large, warm hand covering my trembling ones. "Hey," he murmured, his thumb rubbing comforting circles into my skin. "Don't overthink it. It's just a routine scan to make sure your hormone levels are stabilizing." The head doctor at the clinic happened to be an old military acquaintance of Ronan's. After running the scans, he smiled warmly. "It's just standard post-surgical pheromonal imbalance. Nothing life-threatening. Just take these specific glandular vitamins on time and allow your body to naturally regulate." After writing the prescription, the doctor found a flimsy excuse to call Ronan out into the hallway. Through the cracked door, I couldn't help but overhear. "Ronan, man, what is your actual relationship with him?" the doctor whispered. "He's the Omega listed on my Federation marriage certificate," Ronan replied, his tone laced with pride. The doctor scoffed quietly. "With your former military rank and net worth, you could have picked literally any pristine, top-tier Omega in the inner core. Why settle for a reject with a scraped gland who can't even produce a full scent?" I stopped breathing, my chest tightening painfully. "He is perfect." Ronan's voice dropped an octave, an icy, terrifying alpha warning leaking into his tone. The doctor clearly wanted to argue, but Ronan aggressively clapped a heavy hand onto the man's shoulder, squeezing hard enough to make the doctor wince. "He is your superior's legal husband now. In my eyes, he is the absolute best thing in this galaxy. You will treat him with the respect that title demands." The doctor immediately backed down, throwing up his hands with a sheepish, terrified grin. "Understood, Commander. My sincerest apologies, I completely misspoke." Leaving the clinic, my heart was soaring. Ronan had defended me so fiercely, without a second of hesitation. Since it was coincidentally Valentine's Day, Ronan took me out to eat at a bustling local hot pot restaurant. They were running a holiday promotion. Couples who took a Polaroid picture together at the table received a complimentary dessert. The young waitress looked at us expectantly, holding up the vintage camera. I was entirely flustered and about to politely decline, but Ronan immediately agreed. He slid out of the booth opposite me and came around, sliding in right next to me, his massive thigh pressed solidly against mine. "Could you two lean just a little closer?" the waitress chirped. A more intimate pose, please." I looked up at Ronan, my face burning with a fierce blush. Ronan smoothly wrapped his thick arm securely around my shoulder, pulling me flush against his side. His free hand gently reached up, his rough fingers softly cupping my chin. His thumb gently caressed my cheekbone as his dark, intense eyes stared directly and hotly into mine. The fresh, intoxicating scent of rain-washed grass between us instantly spiked, growing incredibly strong. My heartbeat entirely lost its rhythm, hammering wildly against my ribs. Click. The flash went off, permanently capturing the breathless moment. Ronan and I stared into each other's souls. After the photo developed and was placed on the table, I quickly pulled away from him, burying my burning face in my hands. "You two are such a stunning match," the waitress gushed, returning moments later with 2 massive bowls of lychee shaved ice. Ronan immediately slid the bowl with the most fruit in front of me. "I remembered you said you love lychee, but the doctor said your stomach is still recovering, so don't overdo the cold. Just eat half, okay?" A few days later, Ronan's birthday arrived. I desperately wanted to bake him a cake from scratch. Elias had always liked expensive sweets, but was incredibly picky, constantly complaining that store-bought cakes were far too sweet or utterly unrefined. So, years ago, I had meticulously taught myself how to bake complicated pastries just to please him. Once, while baking a tart for Elias, I had accidentally severely burned my hand on the oven rack. I had run to him for comfort, tears welling in my eyes. Elias had merely frowned with a stern face, grabbed my hand impatiently, and blew on the burn twice before telling me to be more careful. Despite his obvious annoyance, I had clung to the memory of that tiny gesture, foolishly happy for an entire week. Just as I carefully slid Ronan's birthday cake into the farmhouse oven, the doorbell rang violently. I wiped my flour-covered hands on my apron and opened the door. Standing on the porch was an incredibly gorgeous, high-class Omega, holding a massive, ostentatious bouquet of imported roses. He looked me up and down with instant, unfiltered hostility. "Who the hell are you? Where is Ronan?" I straightened my spine. "This is my home. Who are you?" "Your home?" The Omega sneered, his perfectly manicured lips twisting into a viciously disdainful smile. "Oh, you must be that pathetic charity case, the damaged goods the system forcibly assigned to Ronan." He stepped closer, his overpowering, sickly sweet floral pheromones leaking out aggressively to try and suppress my weakened bamboo scent. "Ronan took absolute pity on you and let you stay here to recover out of the goodness of his heart. But do not push your luck, trash. Don't actually think you can cling to a man of his stature. You are an Omega with an incomplete, mutilated gland. What makes you think you're even remotely good enough for someone like Ronan?" His harsh words were like literal daggers, plunging directly into my deepest insecurities. Ronan might look like a terrifying warlord to outsiders, but behind closed doors, he was incredibly thoughtful, deeply attentive, and flawlessly remembered tiny details that others would completely overlook. Since moving to this planet, I had always been the one being pampered and taken care of. He was a phenomenal alpha. But hearing this stranger tear me down sparked an unfamiliar fire in my gut. I wasn't the same pathetic, weeping doormat Elias had broken. "Everyone has the absolute right to be loved," I fired back, my voice steady and cold. "Clearly you couldn't win his heart, so you trekked all the way out here to throw a pathetic tantrum on his porch. Don't you think you're the pathetic one?" The Omega's flawless face instantly contorted into sheer ugliness. "You little bitch, no matter how blindly jealous you get, Ronan will only ever belong to me." "Silas, that is enough." I jumped, whipping my head around. Ronan was standing just a few feet away, having returned from the barns. He was looking directly at me, a faint, heart-stoppingly gentle smile of pure pride shining in his dark eyes at my fiery defense. The once deeply arrogant Omega instantly completely transformed his demeanor, reverting into a delicate, fragile wallflower. "Ronan!" Silas cooed, his floral pheromones instantly spiking into a desperate, needy wave. Ronan utterly ignored the intoxicating scent. He walked past Silas as if he were invisible, marching straight over to me and securely wrapping his heavy, possessive arm around my waist, pulling me flush against him. "Silas," Ronan's voice was as cold and hard as steel, "I remember explicitly telling you I have absolutely zero interest in you." Silas's eyes reddened instantly, genuine shock crossing his face. "Ronan, you rejected me. For this? You like him?" What is there possibly to like about a broken Omega who was literally thrown out like garbage by another Alpha? Ronan's aura darkened terrifyingly. The air pressure in the room dropped, heavy Enigma pheromones suffocating the space. His voice was commanding, absolute, and final. Silas, I do not want to make this exceptionally ugly. If you still want to hold on to the privilege of calling me your brother's friend, then you need to realize Julian is officially your elder and your superior. Is this how your family raised you to treat my husband? He pulled me closer, pressing a firm kiss into my hair. Julian is extraordinary. He is more than good enough for anyone, especially me. His voice was tinged with an impersonal, lethal coldness directed at Silas. Silas was so completely terrified by the crushing alpha pressure that he actually started openly sobbing, choking out a frantic apology in my direction. I'm so sorry. I stood tall in Ronan's embrace, completely silent. Ronan looked down at me softly. Whether you choose to forgive him or not is entirely up to you, Julian. His unwavering support flooded my veins with courage. I looked Silas dead in the eye. I don't want to forgive you. Get off my property. Silas wailed louder. He frantically dumped the expensive flowers and gifts by the door and sprinted back to his hover car in absolute disgrace. Once the door was securely shut, Ronan immediately softened, taking the initiative to explain. Silas is my old army buddy's spoiled younger brother. He aggressively confessed to me a year ago, but I firmly turned him down. I haven't spoken to him since. I lowered my eyes, my cheeks flushing, mumbling softly. You didn't have to explain everything so clearly to me. I trust you. Ronan stepped closer, his towering physical presence entirely overwhelming. I instinctively backed away until the backs of my knees hit the living room sofa, tumbling down into the plush cushions. Ronan immediately leaned over me, trapping me between his muscular arms. His deep, predatory eyes were locked intensely onto my face, my flushed reflection mirrored perfectly in his dark pupils. Julian, his voice dropped to a dangerous, gravelly whisper. I don't want you to ever misunderstand my intentions. I stared up at him dumbly, my mouth dry. Why don't you want me to misunderstand? Meeting his intense, consuming gaze, my heart completely bypassed my ribs, racing as if I were in free fall. A furious heat crept up my neck, painting my cheeks crimson. Ding. The timer blared cheerfully. The birthday cake in the oven was finally ready. The tension shattered, and we both let out a breathless laugh. Light years away, Elias was sitting through a painfully dull dinner with his new, politically advantageous Omega husband when his datapad vibrated. He opened the encrypted message from his private investigator. The moment Elias saw the high-resolution surveillance photo attached to the file, his hand violently jerked, knocking a crystal goblet of ice water directly into his new husband's lap. In the photo, a massive, rugged alpha had his arm securely locked around Julian's tiny waist inside a rustic kitchen. Julian was looking up at the man shyly, his beautiful eyes shimmering like a sunlit spring lake, looking utterly, devastatingly captivated. That specific, gentle, utterly devoted gaze had once belonged exclusively to Elias. Throughout the rest of the ruined dinner, vivid, agonizing scenes of his 6 years with Julian flashed violently through Elias's mind. The person who used to treat Elias like he was the center of the universe, who looked at him like a precious, flawless jewel, was now happily nesting in a total stranger's arms. A monstrous torrent of feral jealousy and blinding anger threatened to entirely drown him. The gloom in Elias's eyes deepened to a pitch-black void, chilling his new husband to the very bone. The very next morning, Elias utilized his limitless corporate resources, boarded his private stealth cruiser, and flew directly to X-Star under the false pretext of scouting an agricultural buyout. After rushing through the fake meetings, he ordered his driver to park silently across the street from the address the PI provided. He rolled down the tinted window and waited. An hour later, the scene that unfolded before him made his alpha blood literally boil in his veins. Julian and that bastard alpha were walking down the rustic town sidewalk. Julian was happily eating a massive scoop of artisanal ice cream, his eyes curving into little crescents of pure, unfiltered satisfaction. He then playfully scooped up a large bite with the tiny plastic spoon and held it directly up to the tall alpha's mouth. The alpha bent down slightly, opening his mouth and taking the bite, nodding and softly praising how good it tasted. The radiant smile in Julian's eyes deepened beautifully. He naturally stood up on his tiptoes, his thumb gently reaching out to intimately wipe a small smudge of vanilla cream from the corner of the Alpha's mouth. In response, the Alpha's massive, calloused hand securely wrapped around Julian's waist, pulling him closer and closer into his broad chest. Their faces were tilting, their lips were getting agonizingly closer. Crack. Elias violently kicked open the armored door of his luxury hovercar. Julian! His voice roared through the quiet street, hoarse, heavy, and practically vibrating with demonic rage. Julian violently flinched, whipping his head around in sheer panic. The color instantly drained from his face, his knuckles turning stark white as he desperately clutched the fabric of his shirt. The tall Alpha, Ronan, casually turned his head. His dark, hardened military gaze swept over Elias, defiantly and methodically sizing up the billionaire interloper. The possessive hand on Julian's waist noticeably tightened, pulling the trembling Omega firmly behind his massive frame. Elias stormed across the street, stopping a few feet away, his chest heaving. "It's only been a few months, Julian. Don't tell me you don't recognize me." Seeing Elias standing there in his immaculate, three-piece bespoke suit, my heart was surprisingly calm. The traumatic memories of the past 6 years flashed vividly before my eyes like a rapid movie reel. The endless regrets, the countless lonely nights, the profound grievances, the brutal surgery. It all just vanished in an instant, leaving behind nothing but utter exhaustion. I looked at Elias, and for the first time, I felt absolutely nothing. Ronan glanced down at my pale face, his jaw locked. He stepped fully in front of me, using his massive body as an impenetrable shield. I reached out, gently squeezing Ronan's calloused hand, signaling him not to worry. I stepped out from behind him, my spine straight. Elias frowned deeply, his bloodshot eyes swimming with frantic, possessive anger. I looked at his furious expression and actually found it darkly laughable. He was the one who had ruthlessly ordered a doctor to drag me onto a surgical table, hacking my gland to pieces so he could legally marry a wealthy heir. And now, he was the one staring at me like he'd just caught an unfaithful spouse cheating on him. "Do you need something, Elias?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. "Can I come see you if I don't need something?" He snapped back, his rum pheromones flaring aggressively, trying to dominate the space. "No." For a fleeting, painful moment, I remembered when Elias and I had first gotten together. I had been so desperately clingy, always finding pathetic excuses to just be in the same room as him. Julian, Elias had once sighed, rubbing his temples in annoyance. "Don't you have anything better to do with your life? You're so incredibly free all the time. Find a hobby." I snapped back to the present. "Elias, you are married, and I am in a committed relationship now. This kind of casual check-in chat is highly inappropriate." Elias's face twisted in agony. "Julian, why didn't you accept the deed to the Ulu Bay villa I sent you?" "Honestly, because I have a good life now. I don't need your blood money. Since you broke us up, it's vastly better for both of us to make a clean, permanent break." Hearing this, Ronan let out a sudden dark, rumbling chuckle. His deep laugh vibrated through the air, sending a flush straight to my face despite the tension. "Mr. Smith," Ronan spoke for the first time, his voice a lethal, vibrating bass. "Chasing after your discarded ex like a stray dog after a breakup isn't very classy for a man of your supposed pedigree." Elias's murderous gaze violently snapped to Ronan. He let out a vicious sneer. Julian was utterly obsessed with me for 6 years. Standing next to me, a literal titan of industry. "You are the one who looks like a pathetic. You two haven't even marked yet, have you?" I can smell it. His gland is still ruined. But did you know, when he was with me, it only took him 1 single month to obediently bare his throat and beg for my teeth? Do you have any idea how wild and utterly shameless he gets in my bed? Part of my heart completely crumbled with a deafening boom. Amidst the dust and ashes of my past love, it shattered into a pathetic pile of ruins. To use our most intimate moments as a weapon, it was sickening. "Elias, I'm warning you." I stepped forward, blocking a suddenly furious, feral-looking Ronan from lunging forward and tearing Elias's head off. "Ronan, don't. He's not worth going to prison over." I turned my absolute disgust onto Elias. "Are you standing here right now because you actually think you still have feelings for me?" Elias firmly pressed his pale lips together, completely silent, his eyes screaming in desperation. "For 6 years," I continued, my voice breaking slightly, but my gaze unyielding. It was always me desperately chasing after your shadow. All my friends told me it wasn't worth the pain. They called me a love-struck fool, a doormat. But I never listened to them. I never kept score. I used to blindly believe that aside from your inability to actually love me back, you were flawless. A single tear slipped down my cheek, hot and final. But looking at you right now, I just feel incredibly, deeply sorry for the old Julian, the boy who foolishly carved his own heart out and offered it up to you on a silver platter. Julian, wait, Elias took a frantic step forward, reaching out. I aggressively slapped his hand away. Reaching up, I violently ripped the medical blocker patch completely off my neck. The brutally mutilated, heavily scarred, half-missing scent gland was fully exposed to the harsh daylight. Elias gasped violently, stumbling back a step as if he had been shot in the chest, his eyes locking onto the horrific, jagged scar tissue. Elias, do you have any fucking idea how much it actually hurts when a surgical scalpel repeatedly slices through your most sensitive biology without anesthesia? I sobbed, the trauma flooding my system. Do you have any idea how the chemical pheromone imbalance completely tormented me, keeping me screaming in agony night after night? You personally orchestrated all this pain. This scar is a permanent, daily reminder of what a cold, soulless monster you truly are. If it were possible to alter reality, I genuinely wish to God I had never met you. I looked at this towering, incredibly wealthy, utterly pathetic man. He was trembling, tears rapidly welling in his cold eyes. Ronan didn't say another word. He just stepped forward, wrapped his massive, warm hand securely around my shaking one, and gently guided me away, completely turning his back on Elias. Once we reached the farmhouse and the heavy wooden door was firmly bolted shut, my legs completely gave out. I collapsed onto the floor, burying my face deeply into Ronan's chest and began to sob hysterically. All the deeply pent-up grievances, the endless nights of silent suffering, and the horrific trauma burst forth like a violently shattered dam. 6 years of sacrificing my absolute everything, and all I was left with was a mutilated body. Ronan sat on the floor with me, gathering my shaking form completely into his massive lap. He gently rubbed my back, burying his face in my hair. "Go ahead and cry, sweetheart," he murmured against my temple, releasing a tidal wave of soothing grass pheromones. "Let it all out. It will finally be over after this." He carefully held my face in his large palms, his rough thumbs infinitely gentle, as they continuously wiped away my bitter tears until I fell into an exhausted sleep. 3 days later, the air in the farmhouse suddenly grew dangerously thick and heavy. The overpowering, dizzying scent of fresh-cut grass and ozone brutally woke me from my deep sleep. Ronan's rut had hit with the force of a hurricane. When I stumbled out into the hallway, I realized he had firmly locked himself inside the steel-reinforced guest room. He absolutely refused to let me in. An alpha's biological rut, especially in enigmas, without an omega's pheromones to naturally soothe the fever, is literal torture. It feels like your bones are melting. The extreme anxiety and feral restlessness rapidly gnaw away at an alpha's sanity like starving wolves. I stood outside the heavy metal door, listening to the horrifying sounds from within. I could hear constant, violent movement, furniture splintering, heavy thuds against the walls, his rapid, ragged breathing completely mixed with deep, guttural, pained groans. I pressed my hands against the cool metal, aggressively pushing my soothing bamboo pheromones under the door crack, trying to blanket his mind. "Ronan," I cried out, banging my fists on the door. "Unlock it, let me in." His deep, distorted, agonized voice roared back from the dark room. "No, absolutely not, Julian. Go away. I completely lose control. I'm going to hurt you." "My gland has fully healed," I pleaded, my heart shattering at his obvious pain. "Julian, stop." I heard his massive body slide down the opposite side of the door, separating us by mere inches of steel. His voice was hoarse, desperately trying to coax me away. "I want to do this right. I want to give you a proper, beautiful, slow-burn romance. I don't want our first time to be fueled by a blind biological fever. Please, baby, be good. Go back to bed. I'll be fine, don't worry." A deep, overwhelming ache violently bloomed in my chest, making my nose sting with fresh tears. How unbelievably lucky was I to have stumbled across a man like Ronan. He willingly offered his strong shoulder for me to cry on when the entire world threw me away. He aggressively stood by my side, risking everything to shield me from my demons. When I was drowning in grief, he silently stayed anchored to my side, constantly inventing tiny ways to make me smile again. And now, even while literally burning alive in a biological hell, his only coherent thought was protecting me from his own monstrous strength. I tightened my grip on the door handle, making a final, absolute decision deep in my soul. That evening, I prepared the heaviest, most nutrient-dense dinner I could manage, placing the tray directly in front of the door before retreating down the hall. I heard the lock click, and Ronan swiftly emerged to drag the food inside. The moment he set the empty tray back outside, I was waiting. Before he could slam the door, I lunged forward, wrapping my arms tightly around his impossibly broad back, burying my face directly into the scorching heat of his spine. Ronan's entire massive frame went instantly rigid, every single dense muscle coiled tight from the electric stimulus of an Omega's touch during a rut. A terrifying, feral growl rumbled deep within his chest. "Julian," he warned, his voice dangerously low, dripping with raw alpha dominance. "Let go. Go back to your room immediately." I aggressively shook my head, refusing to back down, pressing myself completely flush against his burning body. "This is the very first time I have ever bravely initiated physical contact with you. Are you genuinely sure you want to push me away right now?" "Julian, God damn it. I have absolutely zero self-control when it comes to you," he gasped, his hands violently gripping the doorframe to stop himself from turning around and devouring me. "If we actually start this right now, I will not be able to stop." I reached my hands around his waist, my fingers trembling slightly as I boldly began to undo the heavy brass buckle of his belt. I pressed my lips tightly against the sweat-slicked skin of his shoulder blade, my voice dropping into a seductive, breathless whisper. "I am your Omega, Ronan. You have my full permission. Do whatever you want to me." That was the absolute breaking point. The last fragile thread of his sanity violently snapped. Ronan slowly turned around, dropping his hands from the doorframe. His irises were completely blown out, turning his eyes into pitch-black voids that looked like they could swallow my entire existence whole. A terrifying, deeply dangerous glint burned in them, the ancient look of an apex predator finally locking onto his willing prey. Before my brain could even register the movement to swallow, he let out a feral snarl. He hooked a massive, unyielding arm firmly around my waist, lifting my feet completely off the floor, and smashed his mouth desperately against mine. It was like a literal spark hitting a massive pile of gasoline-soaked timber. The inferno ignited instantly. The overpowering, aggressively dominant scent of fresh grass and lightning wrapped completely and permanently around my soul. He threw me effortlessly onto the massive bed, his giant frame caging me in instantly. His burning lips traveled hungrily down my jaw, leaving bruised kisses everywhere. "This might hurt a little, baby," he growled against my scarred neck. "Just bear with it for a second. I've got you." I leaned my head back obediently, exposing my throat, surrendering my entire existence to him. His dangerously sharp enigma fangs violently pierced directly through my scar tissue, sinking deep into my reconstructed gland. I cried out, arching violently off the mattress, but the pain quickly melted into an overwhelming, blinding euphoria, the sense of rain-swept grass and sweet bamboo aggressively intertwined, permanently fusing together at the cellular level. When I finally blinked awake, the morning light was streaming through the farmhouse windows. Ronan's brutal, week-long rut had finally ended. I woke up perfectly cocooned securely inside his massive arms. His rough fingers were gently and rhythmically brushing the sweaty hair away from my completely flushed face. A breathtakingly gentle, lingering kiss landed softly on my forehead. "Julian, you work so incredibly hard for me," he whispered, his voice still deliciously raspy. I looked up. His jet-black eyes held a scorching, adoring light. My chest felt like it had been violently seared with a branding iron, my heart suddenly beating wildly against his. The deeply mixed scents of our pheromones lingered stickily in the air, a physical testament to our absolute bond. Our gazes locked and silently shifted in meaning. We slowly leaned in, sharing a profoundly long, intimately lingering kiss in the golden morning light. During the chaotic 7 days of his feverish rut, despite completely losing his mind to lust, Ronan had somehow maintained enough absolute control to only give me a heavy temporary mark. Seeing my confusion, he patiently explained, gently kissing my swollen lips. "I want your traumatized gland to fully heal from the stress of this week. I don't want you to ever think I took advantage of you while you were trapped in my rut. When you are 100% ready, completely sober and fully recovered, then we will complete the permanent mark." My face flushed a brilliant crimson, and I nodded shyly, hiding my smile against his chest. After that morning, Ronan officially moved out of the guest room and permanently back into the master suite where he belonged. A month after the rut, Ronan was holding me from behind while we watched a holo movie. "I have to travel back to the capital planet in a few days to negotiate a massive agricultural trade contract," he murmured into my hair. "I really want to take you with me to properly introduce you to my old circle. Would you be willing to go?" My heart swelled. No matter what we did, he constantly asked for my active consent, deeply respecting my every single decision. "I'd love to," I smiled. The dinner party was held in the private VIP dining suite of one of the most exclusive ultra-elite clubs on the capital planet. It was a notoriously strict members-only establishment. Ironically, Elias had desperately tried to buy a membership here for years, but had been repeatedly blackballed for lacking old money pedigree. When the ornate mahogany doors swung open, the faces sitting around the massive table made my breath completely hitch. They were all incredibly famous figures I had only ever seen on the Federation evening news broadcasts. Top-ranking generals, elite senators, and corporate titans of the inner systems. I had foolishly believed I had married a simple, rustic sheep farmer. I had absolutely no idea the sheer magnitude of the man holding my hand. Ronan grinned broadly, casually greeting the terrifyingly powerful men with familiar backslaps and handshakes. He pulled me forward, proudly wrapping his arm around my waist for all to see. "Gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my husband, Julian. He's officially the one in charge of all my finances now." Through the boisterous, wine-soaked conversation, I finally learned the truth. Ronan wasn't just a soldier. He was a highly decorated, legendary retired Special Forces colonel who had actively chosen to move to X-Star purely to enjoy a peaceful, quiet retirement away from the corrupt politics of the capital. A heavily decorated general leaned across the table, playfully teasing him. "Ronan, you ruthless bastard, you used to be as frustratingly chaste as a monk. And now look at you, you can't even keep your hands off the boy for 5 minutes." "He's far too wonderful," Ronan shot back flawlessly, kissing my burning cheek. "If I don't hold on to him tightly, what if someone steals him away?" A massive wave of drunken cheers and loud jeers washed over the room. My face turned bright red, and I quickly shrank to hide my face in Ronan's broad chest, listening to the deep, steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Ronan's incredibly powerful friends treated me with the exact same immense respect and deference they gave to him. It was a shocking realization. In my 6 agonizing years with Elias, he had constantly hidden me away, rarely ever formally introducing me to his social circle, acting as if my presence was an embarrassment. After the spectacular dinner, Ronan and I were walking hand in hand toward the club's lavish exit lobby. Suddenly, I froze. Standing near the coat check, looking utterly exhausted and haggard, was Elias. When he spotted me, his dead, tired eyes instantly lit up with a desperate, manic hope. "Julian!" But as he rushed forward, his eyes dropped to my neck. The medical blocker was gone, replaced by the deep, prominent, bruising temporary bite mark of another alpha. The light in Elias's eyes violently died, replaced by pure devastation. He marked you." Ronan stepped smoothly in front of me, his massive frame jealously and completely shielding me from Elias's view. The two alphas silently faced off, the ambient air pressure in the lobby dropping dangerously low as their pheromones violently clashed. "Mr. Smith," Ronan's voice was lethally soft. "Openly coveting someone else's husband is a highly dangerous habit to form. Julian has already made it crystal clear that he wants you completely excised from his life." Elias ignored him, his manic gaze falling onto our tightly intertwined hands. He let out a pathetic, broken, bitter smile. "Julian, please, I just want to speak with you alone. Just for 5 minutes, that's all I ask." "There is absolutely nothing he cannot hear," I replied coldly from behind Ronan's shoulder. "If you actually have something to say it right here." "My new Omega and I were just a business transaction," Elias pleaded, his voice cracking, desperate for me to understand. "We have zero feelings for each other. It's a living hell. Julian, I completely regret it. I was so blind. This corporate power, it is utterly meaningless compared to you. I want you back." I looked at him, feeling a deep, profound wave of pity. Elias, loudly declaring these things now, is completely pointless. It just publicly confirms what an incredibly terrible, selfish person you always were. Elias's pale face completely stiffened. He stared at me for a long time, his eyes shimmering. Finally, he asked a cautious, terrifyingly vulnerable question. Julian, if you had the power to go back in time to 6 years ago at that gala, if you had to choose again, would you still have pursued me? I looked directly into his shattered eyes. I didn't hesitate for a single second. No, my voice echoed with utter finality in the quiet lobby. If I had the power, I would fiercely pray to whatever God is listening that I had never, ever met you. Elias flinched violently, as if I had physically driven a blade straight through his heart. After Elias stumbled out into the rainy street like a walking corpse, Ronan immediately turned to me, squeezing my hand tightly, his dark eyes scanning my face for any signs of distress. I'm perfectly fine, I smiled up at him, my heart incredibly light. You never have to worry about him again. Ronan exhaled heavily. He aggressively pulled me into his arms right there in the lobby, one large hand securely gripping my waist, the other firmly cupping the back of my freshly bitten neck. He was meticulously piecing my previously shattered heart completely back together, gently and fiercely caring for it. From this exact moment forward, he completely and absolutely possessed it. The evening before our shuttle was scheduled to return to X-Star, Ronan surprised me. He had rented out the entire top-floor observation deck of the most famous, breathtakingly expensive romantic restaurant on the capital planet. Halfway through the decadent meal, a series of brilliant, deafening explosions shattered the night sky outside the floor-to-ceiling glass. I gasped, rushing to the window as a massive, privately funded fireworks display completely lit up the skyline in a shower of gold and crimson sparks. A tuxedo-clad waiter silently approached our table, holding an impossibly large bouquet of rare, genetically modified blue roses. Ronan stood up from his chair. He took the massive bouquet and gently placed it into my shocked arms. He looked down at me, nervously rubbing the back of his neck, a faint, boyish blush actually coloring his rugged cheeks. Julian, I've never genuinely pursued anyone before, so please forgive me if I'm being painfully cliché. He slowly reached into his jacket pocket. I know the timing of our relationship has been completely out of order, he continued, his deep voice thick with emotion. But the desperate confession, the romantic late-night dates, the proper proposal, the massive wedding you actually deserve, I swear on my life, I will painstakingly make every single one of them up to you. He slowly sank down onto one knee. He opened a small velvet box, revealing a flawless, custom-cut diamond ring that caught the light of the exploding fireworks. Julian, I love you more than breath. Will you do me the absolute honor of marrying me, for real this time? The heart in my chest was beating so violently, so passionately for this incredible man. Tears of absolute joy blurred my vision. I nodded frantically, throwing my arms around his neck. Yes, I do. I am more than willing to spend 100 lifetimes with you, Ronan. I pulled back, looking deeply into his dark, adoring eyes. Ronan, when my next heat hits, let's finally complete the permanent mark. Not long after we returned to the peaceful quiet of X-Star, my heat arrived exactly as expected. Only this time, Ronan was no longer playing the restrained gentleman. The Alpha's wildly oppressive, intoxicating enigma pheromones assaulted my senses from all directions, drowning me in absolute pleasure. I stared up at Ronan's flushed face, my hazy mind continuously flashing with beautiful images of his flawlessly gentle side, the way he patiently comforted me in the dark, the way he fiercely defended me to his friends, the way he loudly and proudly declared his eternal love for me under the fireworks. My bamboo scent eagerly unfurled, aggressively wrapping around Ronan's aura, demanding to be claimed. The contrasting scents of sweet bamboo and wild, rain-swept grass perfectly blended together, creating a completely new, unique fragrance that belonged only to us. Ronan slowly leaned his heavy body down, his lips ghosting incredibly close to my sensitive ear. The soft, tickling sensation of his hot breath made my entire body violently tremble with anticipation. His burning lips traveled agonizingly slowly down from my earlobe, pressing soft, reverent kisses along my jawline, until they finally pressed firmly against the heavily scarred flesh at the back of my neck. I arched my back, my hands wrapping aggressively around his thick neck, pulling him in tighter. His sharp fangs fully extended, ruthlessly piercing deep into the core of my gland, his potent, permanent Enigma pheromones were violently and completely injected straight into my bloodstream. A biological knot formed, locking us perfectly together, and the permanent, unbreakable alpha claim was finally complete. From this glorious moment forward, I belonged completely to him, and he belonged completely to me. As the solitary, uncontested heir to the Smith global empire, I rarely ever had a single moment of time for myself. My entire childhood was a cold, calculated curriculum filled with endless corporate studies, political grooming, and strict etiquette classes. My ruthless alpha father constantly hammered it into my brain. As a Smith, I was required to work 1,000 times harder, be 1,000 times colder, and be 10,000 times more ruthless than anyone else on the planet. Vulnerability was a fatal disease. Julian had been the one single glowing bright spot in my miserable black and white life. His sweet, utterly clingy calls of my name could instantly erase a whole week's worth of corporate fatigue. Unfortunately, the carefree days of our youth didn't last. The Liu family's modest financial fortunes had suddenly taken a disastrous turn, and they quickly went bankrupt. Not long after, they were forced to move away to the outer rims. When we finally reconnected at that gala years later, that delicate, fragile porcelain doll from my youth had fully blossomed into something breathtaking. His face was palm-sized, his features exquisitely and flawlessly perfect, with soft red lips and bright eyes, the absolute type to instantly stun you into silence at first glance. He had eagerly greeted me with such incredible warmth. When I deliberately didn't respond, testing him, playing the cold alpha, his eyes had fallen in adorable disappointment. But in a split second, that radiant, forgiving smile returned to his face, illuminating the room. The 6 years I spent dominating Julian's life were undeniably the happiest, most deeply relaxed years of my entire existence. When I was locked away with him in that apartment, I didn't have to be the terrifying Smith heir who had to mercilessly crush his competitors. I could just be Elias. But it turns out, human beings should never be utterly spoiled. For 6 long years, I carelessly, recklessly squandered Julian's bottomless well of love. I arrogantly treated his devotion as my birthright, yet I never once lowered my massive pride to actually tell him I loved him out loud. In the cutthroat world of corporate business, the one who shows their emotional hand first is the guaranteed loser. But I catastrophically forgot that true love isn't a boardroom negotiation. I arrogantly thought I was the ultimate winner of the game. I had the corporation, the arranged political marriage for infinite power, and I assumed Julian would just pathetically wait in the wings for me forever. In reality, I had actively orchestrated the loss of my entire world. I couldn't publicly let go of everything I had built, nor could I abandon the decades of blood and effort I had put into violently seizing the title of head of the Smiths. So, in an act of supreme, unforgivable cowardice, I personally ordered the doctors to forcefully drag Julian to the operating table to rip my claim from his throat. I genuinely thought I would be perfectly fine with the decision. I thought it was just business. But when I stood on that rustic sidewalk on X-Star, watching Julian smiling so brightly, so beautifully, wrapped tightly in the massive arms of another alpha, I completely shattered. I couldn't control the demonic, suffocating monster of jealousy violently churning inside my chest. That specific scene permanently burned into my retinas, stinging my eyes with an acid I couldn't blink away. When Julian had furiously pointed to the incredibly ugly, jagged scar on his ruined neck, sobbing as he detailed the sheer agony I had inflicted upon him, I finally truly realized what an unforgivably horrific monster I had become. His parting words hammered directly into my soul like rusted, jagged iron nails, raw, painful, and eternally bleeding. It turned out I had already destroyed him beyond any hope of repair. Scalding, bitter tears dripped uncontrollably down my face, landing heavily onto the lapel of my expensive, meaningless suit. He said he genuinely wished he had never known me. He said he was finally happy and firmly begged me to never ever bother him again. He had turned his back on me, his small hand securely encased in that giant alpha's protective grip, and he walked away without giving me a single solitary glance backward. I had slowly, agonizingly sank to my knees on the cold concrete sidewalk, completely ignoring the shocked stares of the passing townsfolk. Even though the frontier wind was strong enough to quickly blow away the wet tears on my pale face, new ones kept violently rolling down, an endless, pathetic stream of absolute, world-ending regret. I had conquered the entire galaxy, only to realize I was completely, utterly alone in the dark.